Well, welcome to another Wednesday edition of virtually tasting the featured effin' beer of the week. This week we're going to be tasting everybody's favorite seasonal spring beer, Diablo del Sol, an English pale ale. Diablo is just every season. It's most anticipated. I hear everybody ask, when's that coming out again? It's my favorite beer, and it's coming out this weekend. So you can get growler fills of it. You will be able to enjoy it at home, and I suggest maybe getting a couple of them because you're going to want to share it with your friends as well. Okay, so Diablo del Sol English Pale Ale is 5.2% alcohol by volume. It's 51 IBUs. It's got an original gravity of 1.058 and a terminal gravity of 1016. It's got a 12.2 SRM. That's the color schedule on it. If you look at that, it's got a nice, I'd say a dark, more of a copperish color on it. It's got a beautiful white head to match the color, so it's a very handsome beer. We do it in a 15.5 gallon batch, which is a half barrel, and we use London water and we use Yeast 1007, which is their German ale yeast. That's the secret on this beer, is that German ale yeast gives you a nice clean character and it lets the malts and the hops really distinct, and there's no really fruity ester profile that comes out. We use two malts, both of them Crisp, our favorite maltster. And we use Crisp Maris Otter for 30 pounds, or 94% of the malt bill, and the rest is Crystal 120L, which is a dark crystal malt, 2 pounds or 6% of the malt bill. That's mashed in at a 148, which is a lower temperature, and the lower temperature gives us the shorter chain sugar so we can get a clean fermentation, not have too much body left in the beer. We don't want a big mouthfeel on it, but we want to have that clean transformation of those sugars to alcohol. So we mashed it at 148 for 1 hour. We sparge it with 170 degree water to strip all that grain off the husk of the barley. Collect it in a boil kettle and boil it for 1 hour. At that point, we're going to add, we only have one kind of hop we use. We have 3 additions. At 60 minutes, we add 2 ounces of Cascade hops. That gives us about 18 IBUs, and then at 30 minutes we add 4 ounces of Cascade hops, gives another about 18 IBUs. And then with 5 minutes to go, we add 10 ounces. That's a lot of hops to add at the end, and it gives us another 15 IBUs. But they're also not just IBUs, they're also flavor and aroma that we're going to get out of it, because there is no dry hopping on this beer. And this boils for 1 hour, and then we transfer it into our fermentation at 65 degrees, let it rise to 68, let it ferment for 1 week, take it out and put it in our secondary at 32 degrees for another week. Now that cold temperature is really, really important on using the German ale yeast, because that's very sticky, and it takes that cold temp to really strip that yeast off the liquid and off those sugars, and it needs to drop out. And so it takes that 32 degrees for a week to really, really clean that beer up. And you can see that's got good clarity to it. I don't know if you can tell in there, but it really has good clarity to it. So with all those hops put at the end, should be anticipated we have a great hop aroma. It's just beautiful. Those Cascade hops give you that citrusy, just classic Northwest, West Coast, what you really think of, but oh, it's just a beautiful smell. And the taste on this beer, well, this was served at 40 degrees, and I would say because you want the crispness of this beer, because that's what it's about: crisp, flavor, hops, balance. And at this temperature, I'm getting that nice biscuity, bready character on that. A little bit of maybe some raisin character from that 120 dark crystal malt, but I'm getting big bursts of citrus flavor from the hops. Nice dry finish, not overly bitter though, because the bulk of these hops are going in at the end of the boil, and we're not getting really that stringent hoppy bitterness out of it. We're getting a nice balance to it. But it's got a nice dry finish to it. Beautiful beer, bright, crisp. It's a great beer to be thinking about right now with the weather we've been having. This makes you think about spring. Delicious beer. Little history on pale ales. So in 1642 was the first time they used coke as their heating agent to roast the malts, and that gave us the first pale malt they ever came with. So that was in 1642. 1703 is the first time pale ale was ever used as a term. And then in the early 1800s, pale ales were starting to get their momentum and their interest from the public. And mainly it was a bitter that was bottled. That's really how pale ale started. It was an English bitter, but when they bottled it, became a pale ale. Now, as we know today, pale ales usually is going to be, from what we know now, even in England, pale ales are higher alcohol, higher hopped than a bitter. But still, in many of the breweries in England, pale ales is going to be the hoppier and higher alcohol beer of that whole category. So India pale ales typically were lower alcohol and lower IBUs, lower bitterness units. And they put those even more of these hops at the end, and even to the cask at the end, because they wanted to have a preservation to preserve the beer. So that's really what this is all about, and this is about enjoying a bright, crisp, beautiful beer with a nice hoppiness to it, but very drinkable. And this would go well with just about anything. I'm going to bring this camera a little closer. We can talk about who's here, and we can see if there's any questions, because questions makes it really kind of a more fun experience here for these virtual tastings. Well, we've got Kim, we got Zach. Zach says he's drinking a big beaver he poured 20 minutes ago like a good boy. So that's a good beer because now it's warmed up, and it's probably tasting really, really good. We got Lisa. Thanks for saying it's a beautiful beer. It really is. Maybe from this close you can get a little better picture of what this looks like. And it's hard to see the clarity on it just because of the lighting in here being inside. If it was outside, you'd be able to see through that beer. So Zach asked me, do you drink this beer a bit colder than your other beers for the Christmas? Yes, and so there's several beers that I like to have a little bit colder of the beers that we brew, and this is one of them. And I like it for that crisp character. It gives brightness to it, and it brings out the character I'm looking for. Now, I've had this beer at about 50 degrees because we've done it on cask before. It is delicious on cask too, but it's a whole different profile. And when I'm looking at this beer for right now, I want this crispness to it. Is it one of the hoppier beers that we make? I would say no, but and it's really not that hoppy. I mean, it's got a lot of hops in it, but since it's a late addition, I wouldn't call this really a hoppy beer. Has the recipe changed over the years? No, this is before we actually opened up, which is almost 11 years ago. This beer was a tough beer to make, and I never really was very happy with it. And the biggest change in this beer that made it the way we like it today is switching to that German ale yeast. And it gives us clean character to it. I wanted the malts and the hops to shine, and I didn't want that fruity ester to kind of confuse what's going on in the beer. And I want it to be really a clean beer, and that German ale yeast really does that. So since we've been open and since we released this beer to the public under the Foggy Noggin brand, it's always been this recipe. So Burton-on-Trent, which is in northern England, has some of the harder waters, and this typically, Bass is the big famous pale ale and Burton ale and IPA brewer. That water really lended to bringing more out of the hops, because the harder the water you have, the more perception of the hops you get as well. So that's kind of interesting. This beer, Zach asked about blending this beer. This beer is really, really good for blending. I like to take it with non-hoppy beers, like our dark mild would be a great one, or even our pale mild. This goes really well with our English bitter, because you can take that and bring it with something that has an even bigger malt character to it, but add a little bit more hops to it, so it makes it changes it. It's a very interesting beer. It even goes well with like our porter. You're going to get like a little bit hoppier porter on it. I think playing around with blending beers is a lot of fun, and this is a really good beer because it's very clean, crisp, and it's got nice hop character to it, but not overly bitter, and it would blend really well with other beers. So it's 5.2% alcohol, which is right in the middle road of what pale ales really look at, which is it's not overly high in alcohol. It's beer you could enjoy a couple of those, 2 or 3, and you'll be fine. At 51 IBUs, I don't want to scare people because a lot of people don't like that bitterness in it, and this is not really that bitter of a beer. It's got a lot of hop character, a lot of hop flavor, but it's not really that bitter. It's a favorite of so many of the Foggy Noggin customers, and I know we're going to have a lot of growler fills coming out this weekend on this beer. So we brew it at 15.5 gallons at a time. We'll go over the recipe one more time, so you might want to ask some questions about that, or if you're a home brewer, you might want to get your pencil out and write this down. So for a half barrel, 15.5 gallons, we use 30 pounds of crisp Maris Otter. Now you could use any English pale malts, but Maris Otter, in my opinion, is going to give you the biggest flavor. So if you can find Maris Otter from any of your homebrew places that you're going to use, 30 pounds and 2 pounds of crisp Crystal 120. So the darkest English crystal malt you can find would be really what you want to put, and it's only 2 pounds, so it's 6% of the malt bill. And you want to mill those and mash it in at 148 degrees. And that gives you the ability to have shorter chain sugars, which will make it easier for them to ferment, so you have a clean beer. This has got a light mouthfeel, and it's not chewy at all, and it's going to be just a clean beer. And I think that adds a lot of character to it. You're going to boil it for 1 hour and add 3 different amounts of Cascade hops. So at 60 minutes, you're going to add 2 ounces. At 30 minutes, you're going to add 4 ounces. In 5 minutes left in the boil, you add 10 ounces. And that's a really, really big amount to put in there, but you get that nice aroma. You're going to pick up a lot of aroma out of that beer, and it just is really good. And it really, just by smelling it, kind of whets your appetite and makes you want to take a taste. And you get that big burst of Cascade citrusy deliciousness matched with that biscuity bready, so it's just a great complement of those two. Ferment for 1 week, pitch it at 65, let it rise to 68 using the German ale yeast from Weiss, the 1007. And the key on that beer, since you're going to use the German ale yeast, is you need to have cold secondary. So you want that yeast to fall out of suspension, and it needs to be as cold as you can get it. And I do it for a week, but you could do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and it would make it sure that you have good quality cleanliness of that beer, and you want to have all that yeast drop out. We force carbonate this to 1.5 volumes, and that's the English standard, and that gives you not too much carbonation to take something out of this beer, but it has enough in there that gives just a little bit of spritz on the tongue to accentuate some of the flavors. Beaver and Diablo equals Devil Beaver. Yeah, that would be a good one for it. Just a favorite. So I am sure we're going to start getting all kinds of orders on it. I haven't updated our website yet. I'll try to do that either tonight or tomorrow morning. And you can start placing your orders for Friday and Saturday curbside pickup. Growlers are $16 of this delicious beer. 4 to 5 p.m. for curbside pickup. So you go to the foggynogginbrewing.com website and hit the beer tab. And on that beer tab is all the things that's available this week. It's not updated yet, but it will be soon. And you can place your orders for growler fills and bottles and Foggy Noggin merchandise. So pint glasses, shirts, hats, all kinds of stuff. So check it out, and we look forward to seeing you guys for curbside pickup. Now, Thursdays is our happy half hour, and that's tomorrow, 5:30 on Facebook Live, and you get some music, some piano, some singing, some fun, just some good humor, and just happiest half hour of the week. And it's the official start of the weekend. And Lisa says, can you bring a growler and get it filled? Well, in normal circumstances, until this COVID crisis lets us have everybody be comfortable, we're not filling your own growlers. We're swapping out Foggy Noggin logoed growlers If you don't have one, you can purchase one when you place your order. That way you bring that back and we swap it out. We clean it, and that way we're not having somebody else's growler interfere with the pouring of beers, and anybody gets worried about any contamination. Once COVID's over, yes, personal growlers can be filled. So sorry about that, Lisa, but we're trying to keep everybody safe out there. So I appreciate you guys joining. This is a crowd favorite beer, Diablo del Sol, and Devil of the Sun is the translation, and it's really our early spring awareness. And this is spring in a glass, and it smells like spring, and when I taste it, I feel like I can feel a little sunshine on my shoulder. So cheers, everyone. Hope to see you this weekend for Curbside Pick. I hope to see you tomorrow for the happiest half hour, and we'll see you next week, and we'll do this again for another virtual tasting of the featured effin' beer of the week. Cheers, everyone. Bye.